I sat in the bathroom stall at work, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The payroll spreadsheet stared back at me from the document I had just photographed. I recognized every name on that list. The new hire who started 6 months ago, the one I personally trained on our entire software system, made $34,000 more than me. Another recent hire made $41,000 more. I had been with this company for 13 years. My stomach turned as footsteps echoed outside the stall. Someone was looking for that document. I took 3 photos before they could take it back. The afternoon crawled by in a fog. I sat at my desk staring at my monitor, but I was not really seeing the code on my screen. Every few minutes, I pulled up the photo on my phone and checked the numbers again, hoping I had misread them. I had not. 34,000, 41,000. The numbers burned into my brain. I had started at this software company right out of college, 25 years old and eager to prove myself. I was now 38, 13 years of early mornings and late nights, 13 years of weekend deployments and emergency fixes at 2 in the morning, 13 years of training new employees, leading critical projects, mentoring junior developers, and they paid me 70% of what these newcomers made. I opened my calculator app and did the math again. 72%, actually. Almost 3/4. But that somehow felt worse. Not even dignified enough to round up to 75. By 5 o'clock, most people had left for the day. I stayed at my desk, pulling up old emails, performance reviews, project completions. Every annual review for the past 13 years rated me as exceeds expectations or outstanding performer. Every single one. The raises that came with those reviews averaged 2 to 3%. Cost of living adjustments, they called them. Just enough to make you feel like they noticed, not enough to actually keep up with market rates. I thought about my manager, Paul. He had been here 8 years, reported to the same executives I did. He always seemed supportive during our one-on-one meetings. He nodded sympathetically when I mentioned wanting career growth. He praised my work on projects, but now I wondered what those nods really meant. That evening, I could barely eat dinner. My husband Marcus noticed immediately. He always could read me. After 13 years together, married for 7, he knew when something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, putting down his fork. Our kids, Emma and Jack, were still eating, absorbed in their own conversation about something that happened at school. I waited until they finished and ran off to play before I showed Marcus the photo. He stared at it for a long time. His jaw tightened. Marcus taught high school English, so he understood what it meant to be undervalued and underpaid. But this was different. This was not a systemic issue with public school funding. This was my company choosing to pay me less. "You need to talk to them," he said quietly. "Tomorrow." I barely slept that night. I kept running through scenarios in my head. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe those new hires had special skills I did not know about. Maybe there was context I was missing. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had trained both of them. I knew exactly what they brought to the table, and it was not worth $30,000 to $40,000 more than what I brought. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Paul. He seemed surprised, but agreed to meet at 10. His office was small, wedged between 2 conference rooms. He had photos of his family on the desk, a few tech conference badges pinned to a corkboard. We had worked together for years. I thought we had a good relationship. "What's going on, Teresa?" he asked, gesturing for me to sit. I did not sit. I was too nervous. If I sat, I might lose my nerve. "I need to talk about compensation," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. His expression shifted. Just slightly, but I caught it, a kind of wariness. "Okay," he said slowly. I pulled up the photo on my phone. I accidentally saw a payroll document yesterday. I know what the new hires make. I know I make significantly less. I need to understand why. Paul leaned back in his chair. He rubbed his face. For a moment, I thought he might actually help me. "Teresa, I understand this is frustrating, but compensation is complicated. There are a lot of factors." "Like what?" "I have more experience. More responsibilities. I train new employees. I lead critical projects. What factors make me worth less? Market rates change over time. When you were hired 13 years ago, the market was different. New hires come in at current market rates. So you are saying I am being paid 13-year-old rates for doing current work? He did not answer that directly. I think you should talk to HR. Sandra can explain the compensation structure better than I can. I felt my chest tighten. He was passing me off, not fighting for me, not even trying. Will you advocate for me? I asked. Will you tell them I deserve fair pay? Another pause. Another careful, political non-answer. I will support whatever HR decides is appropriate. I left his office feeling worse than when I entered. Sandra from HR agreed to see me that afternoon. Her office was larger than Paul's, decorated with motivational posters about teamwork and valuing people. The irony was not lost on me. I showed her the same information. I explained the disparity. I kept my tone professional, even though my hands were shaking. Sandra's response was immediate and cold. Where did you get this document? I found it on the printer. Someone left it there. That is confidential payroll information. You should not have accessed it. I did not access anything. It was sitting on the printer in a public area. Regardless, discussing compensation with other employees violates company policy, and taking photos of confidential documents is a serious breach. I stared at her. I am trying to address a pay equity issue. That is protected under labor law. What you are doing is creating a hostile work environment by making unfounded accusations about compensation practices. The meeting went downhill from there. By the time I left, I felt like I was the one who had done something wrong. She scheduled a follow-up meeting with the CFO for the next day, but made it clear I was on thin ice. An hour later, Sandra called me back to her office. She slid a piece of paper across her desk, a written warning. For accessing confidential documents without authorization. For creating a hostile work environment by making unfounded compensation complaints. I read it twice, barely comprehending. This goes in your permanent file, Sandra said. I suggest you think carefully before pursuing this further. I walked back to my desk in a daze. They were not fixing the problem. They were building a case to fire me if I pushed back. The message was clear. Shut up or get out. That night, Marcus held me while I cried. Emma came into our bedroom and asked why Mommy was sad. I told her work was just stressful. She hugged me and said she loved me. Jack peeked around the corner and gave me a thumbs up. Their innocence, their trust that the world was fair, made it hurt even more. But underneath the hurt, something else was building. Something harder and colder. Anger. I prepared for the meeting with the CFO like I was preparing for a trial. I printed documentation of every project I had led. I pulled performance reviews going back 13 years. I created a spreadsheet comparing my responsibilities to those of the new hires. Large desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. Awards and plaques lined one wall. Photos of him with various tech industry leaders covered another. Teresa, he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. I understand we have some concerns to address. Some concerns. Like I was complaining about the coffee quality. I launched into my presentation. 13 years with the company. Consistently excellent performance reviews. Major projects I had delivered. The mobile app redesign that increased user engagement by 47%. The database optimization that saved the company 6 figures annually in server costs. The security upgrade that prevented a potential breach. Dozens of employees I had trained. Gregory listened, but his body language was all wrong. He checked his phone twice. He drummed his fingers on the desk. When I showed him the comparison of my salary versus the new hires, he cut me off. Market rates have changed, he said. The same line Paul had used. They had clearly coordinated their response. These new hires have less experience than me. I trained them. How does the market justify paying them more for doing less? The market is what it is, Teresa. When we hire new talent, we have to pay competitive rates to attract them. That is just economics. And what about retaining talent? What about the economics of keeping experienced employees? Gregory's expression hardened. Company policy is that we do not discuss compensation between employees. The fact that you are even having this conversation suggests you accessed information you should not have. It was left on a printer. That does not give you permission to photograph it and use it to make demands. Demands. I was making demands now. I am not making demands. I am asking for fair pay. Gregory leaned forward, elbows on his desk. Teresa, let me be frank with you. If you think you are worth more than what we are paying you, you are free to go find someone who will pay you more. That is how the market works. We have a budget. We have a compensation structure. We apply it consistently. If you do not like it, that is your choice to make. The dismissiveness in his tone was staggering. 13 years. And I was just a line item in a budget. Easily replaceable. Paul stared at his shoes. Sandra took notes, her face impassive. Is that your final answer? I asked. That is company policy. The meeting ended. Gregory stood, signaling we were done. I gathered my papers with shaking hands. Paul hurried out. Sandra stayed back to exchange a few words with Gregory. I walked down the hallway toward my desk. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not where they could see. I passed Gregory's office. The door was slightly ajar. I heard his voice and stopped. I should have kept walking. But something made me pause. Just dealt with another one, Gregory was saying. He was on the phone. His tone completely different now. Relaxed. Almost jovial. They never leave. They complain. We stonewall. They stay because they are too scared to start over. 13 years of underpaying her. She will give us 13 more. Laughter from the other end of the line, Gregory continued. Why would we fix it? We save $200,000 a year keeping the old employees at their legacy rates. Let them train the expensive new ones, then we will cycle them out before they catch on. More laughter. Gregory leaned back in his chair, feet up on his desk. These people think loyalty means something. It does. It means we can pay them less. I stood frozen in the hallway. Time seemed to stretch. A full-body numbness spread through me, followed by a heat that started in my chest and radiated outward. They knew. They knew exactly what they were doing. This was not an oversight. This was not bureaucracy or market forces. This was calculated exploitation. They viewed my loyalty, my dedication, my 13 years of hard work as weakness to be exploited. I walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and for the first time in my adult life, I understood what people meant when they said they saw red. My hands were not shaking anymore. They were steady. The tears were gone. In their place was a cold, clear focus. They thought I would stay. They thought I was too scared to leave. They were wrong. I spent the rest of the day documenting everything. Not frantically, but methodically. Years of software development had taught me to keep good records. Now I applied that same discipline to building my case. I forwarded emails to my personal account, carefully, selectively. Nothing proprietary, nothing that could be construed as theft. Just documentation of my work, my projects, my contributions, performance reviews, project completion reports, emails praising my work, training schedules showing who I mentored. I was careful. I did not want to give them ammunition to claim I stole company property. Every email I sent to myself was something I had authored or that documented my own performance. By the end of the day, I had a comprehensive record of 13 years of excellent work and systemic underpayment. That evening, I reached out to Jennifer. She had left the company 2 years ago under circumstances that were never fully explained. One day she was there, the next day she was gone. The official story was that she found a better opportunity, but the speed of her departure, the way people did not talk about it, always felt suspicious. I found her on social media and sent a message. Just a casual hello, asking how she was doing. She responded within an hour. We agreed to meet for coffee the next day after work. The coffee shop was neutral territory, far enough from the office that we would not run into colleagues. Jennifer arrived first. I barely recognized her. She looked older, tired. She had always been energetic, one of those people who lit up a room. Now she seemed dimmed. We made small talk for a few minutes. How was her new job? How were her kids? Then I got to the point. I need to ask you something. What really happened when you left? Her expression changed. Guarded. Why are you asking? Because I think the same thing is happening to me. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she sighed. What did you find out? I told her about the payroll document. The meeting with Paul, with Sandra, with Gregory, the written warning, the overheard conversation. Jennifer nodded slowly, like she was hearing a familiar story. I was with the company for 11 years. About 3 years ago, I found out I was making $48,000 less than a guy who had been there for 3 years doing the same job. I went to HR. They gave me the runaround for months. Then I started getting bad performance reviews. Suddenly, after 11 years of excellent ratings, I was not meeting expectations. They put me on a performance improvement plan. I knew what that was. A paper trail to justify firing me. What did you do? I quit before they could fire me. I needed a reference. I could not afford to be terminated. So I left quietly. And they got to write the narrative. Where are you now? Smaller company. I make less than I made there. But at least I am not working somewhere that sees me as disposable. She took a sip of her coffee. Teresa, they do this. It is a pattern. There were others before me. I talked to a few of them after I left. All women. All long-term employees. All underpaid and pushed out when they complained. My blood ran cold. How many? At least 6 that I know of in the past 5 years. Could be more. Why did no one do anything? Because fighting costs money and time and energy. Because they have lawyers and power and connections. Because most of us could not afford to lose our jobs or burn bridges in the industry. So we left quietly and moved on. I thought about that. The calculation they made. Pay people less. Count on them staying out of fear or loyalty. When they complain, make their lives miserable until they leave. Rinse and repeat. Save hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you have names? I asked. Of the others. Jennifer hesitated. Then she pulled out her phone. I will send you contact info for 2 of them. Diana and Lynn. Diana especially. She almost fought back. She might talk to you. That night, after Marcus and the kids went to bed, I reached out to Diana and Lynn through messaging apps. I kept it vague, just introduced myself, said Jennifer, suggested I contact them, asked if they would be willing to talk. Diana responded within an hour. Are you thinking about fighting them? I typed back, maybe. I need to know what I am up against. Call me. She wrote, and included her number. I called. Diana answered on the second ring. Her voice was strong, confident, late 40s, maybe 50. She told me her story. 14 years with the company. Senior developer. Discovered she was making $60,000 less than male colleagues with less experience. Filed a complaint with HR, then filed a formal complaint with the Department of Labor. What happened? I asked. Gregory called me personally. Told me if I pursued the complaint, he would make sure I never worked in tech again. He has connections. Investors, board members at other companies. He made it clear that one phone call from him could blacklist me. That is illegal. Prove it. I withdrew the complaint. I needed to work. I could not afford a legal battle, so I backed down, and they let me leave with a reference. Do you still have the documentation? Long pause. Yes. I kept everything. Every email, every pay stub, every piece of evidence. I told myself I would do something with it someday, but I never did. Would you share it with me? Another pause. Longer this time. Are you ready to actually do something about it, Teresa? Because if you are, I will help you. I will give you everything I have. But you need to understand what you are getting into. Gregory is ruthless. He will come after you. He will try to destroy your career. You need to be all in. No halfway. I thought about Emma and Jack. About Marcus' teaching salary. About our mortgage and health insurance and the financial stability I had relied on for 13 years. About the fear that had kept Diana and Jennifer and Lynn and who knows how many others silent. Then I thought about that conversation I overheard. These people think loyalty means something. It does. It means we can pay them less. I am all in, I said. Okay then, Diana said. Let us burn it down. Over the next week, I met with Diana 3 times. She brought boxes of documentation. Literally boxes. Years of pay stubs, emails, performance reviews, org charts showing salary disparities. She had kept meticulous records. We compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Her evidence, my evidence. Contact information for Jennifer and Lynn and two other women Diana connected me with. A pattern emerged. Clear, undeniable, systematic. Diana also connected me with an employment attorney named Rachel Brennan. Rachel specialized in workplace discrimination. She agreed to review the case for a consultation fee. Rachel's office was in a modest building downtown. No floor-to-ceiling windows or leather chairs, just functional furniture and walls covered with legal degrees and bar certifications. She was maybe 45, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed our documentation for 2 hours, making notes, asking questions. Finally, she looked up. You have a strong case. Gender-based pay discrimination. Pattern and practice. Retaliation for protected activity. Hostile work environment. Can we win? I asked. In court? Probably. These cases often settle before trial. But you need to decide what you want. Do you want money? Do you want your job back? Do you want to change the company? Do you want to send a message to the industry? I had not thought about it in those terms. What is the difference? If you want money, we negotiate a quiet settlement. You sign an NDA. Take a check. Move on with your life. The company admits no wrongdoing. Nothing changes for anyone else. And if I do not want that, then we file formal complaints with the Department of Labor and the EEOC. We make noise. We go public if necessary. You will not get rich, but you might change things for other women. You might force real reforms. What are the risks? Rachel leaned back in her chair. The company will fight hard. They have resources. Gregory has connections. It will be stressful and time-consuming. They will try to discredit you. And even if you win, you will never work there again. You will need to find a new job, and you will do it with this fight attached to your name. Some employers will respect that. Others will see you as trouble. I looked at Diana. She nodded. It is worth it. I thought about it for 3 days. Marcus and I talked through every scenario. We ran the numbers. His salary alone could not support us, but we had some savings. We could be careful for a while. The kids would be fine. But more than the practical considerations, I kept coming back to what Jennifer said. At least 6 women, probably more, and they were still doing it. Still exploiting loyalty. Still pushing out anyone who complained. If I took a settlement and signed an NDA, I would be complicit in that system. I would be choosing my own comfort over the next woman who discovered the same truth I had. I could not do it. I told Rachel I wanted to go public, file the complaints, make noise, change things. Okay, Rachel said. Then let us build a case they cannot ignore. As we worked, I learned more about my company's current situation. They were in the middle of securing a major investment round. $20 million from a venture capital firm called Tech Venture Capital. The deal was in due diligence phase. Any scandal could derail it. I also discovered they were applying for a government contract with the Department of Defense. A 5-year deal worth tens of millions. One of the requirements for government contractors was certification of fair labor practices. The timing mattered. A discrimination scandal right now would be devastating. I drafted a resignation letter, not a quiet 2 weeks' notice. A detailed, point-by-point documentation of the discrimination, the retaliation, the systemic exploitation. I named names. Gregory, Sandra. I cited specific examples, the pay disparities, the written warning for asking questions, the overheard conversation. I copied it to the CEO, David Hartman, to the board of directors, to several major clients who I had worked with directly over the years. Rachel reviewed it. This will explode. You understand that? Yes. Once you send this, there is no taking it back. I know. I scheduled it to send Monday morning at 8. Friday afternoon, I would be at work as usual. Then over the weekend, Rachel would file the formal complaints with the Department of Labor and the EEOC. Monday morning, my email would go out, and the complaints would become public record. Friday afternoon arrived. I was at my desk, reviewing code, when Sandra called me. Gregory needs to see you. Now. My heart raced. Did they know? Had someone tipped them off? I walked to the conference room. Gregory was there. Sandra, Paul, and two people I had never seen before. Men in expensive suits, leather briefcases. Teresa, sit down, Gregory said. His voice was different. Careful, almost nervous. The two strangers introduced themselves. Attorneys from the company's law firm. Corporate defense specialists. We have become aware of some concerns about compensation practices, one of the attorneys said. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. We want to address those concerns proactively. He slid a document across the table. We are prepared to offer you a settlement, $150,000, a mutual separation agreement. You leave the company, we provide a positive reference, everyone moves forward. I looked at the document. It was thick, lots of legal language, but the key section was clear. Non-disclosure agreement. I could not discuss my salary, my complaints, the settlement, or any company practices. Ever. With anyone. You have 1 hour to decide, the attorney said. This offer expires at 5 o'clock today. I looked at Gregory. He was sweating. Literally sweating. This man who had been so dismissive, so arrogant, now looked afraid. They knew. Someone had warned them. Or maybe they just saw the pattern. Woman discovers discrimination, goes quiet for a week, probably talking to a lawyer. I looked at the settlement number again. $150,000. More than 2 years of my current salary. Enough to give us a cushion while I found something new. I need to think about it, I said. You have until 5, the attorney repeated. I walked out of that conference room, went to my desk, packed my laptop, and left. I did not come back. I drove home. Called Rachel. They just offered me $150,000, I told her. Take it or leave it. I have until 5 to decide. What do you want to do? I thought about Gregory's face, about how scared he looked, about how powerful that made me feel. I want them to know they cannot buy silence anymore, I said. Then do not sign, Rachel said, and be ready for them to come at you hard. At 4:55, I sent an email to the attorneys. I declined the offer. See you Monday. Then I turned off my phone and had dinner with my family. The weekend felt surreal. Marcus kept asking if I was sure. The kids sensed something was different but could not quite figure out what. I felt strangely calm. The decision was made. Now it was just execution. Rachel filed the formal complaints with the Department of Labor and the EEOC on Saturday. She also sent copies to the State Labor Board. The complaints were public record. Anyone could access them. Sunday night, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone, checking the email scheduled to send at 8 in the morning. I had written and rewritten it a dozen times. Rachel had reviewed it. Diana had reviewed it. It was professional but devastating. Facts, not emotions. Dates, numbers, names. At 7:55 Monday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. Marcus stood behind me, hands on my shoulders. Emma and Jack were getting ready for school, oblivious to what was about to happen. 8 o'clock arrived. The email sent. 2. CEO David Hartman. Board of Directors. Major clients. CC. Diana, Jennifer, Lynn, Rachel. Subject: resignation and formal complaint regarding systematic gender-based pay discrimination. Dear Mr. Hartman and board members. After 13 years of loyal service to this company, I am resigning effective immediately. This decision comes after discovering systematic and intentional gender-based pay discrimination that has cost me and other female employees hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wages. The email went on for 3 pages. It detailed everything. The payroll document, the meetings with Paul, Sandra, and Gregory, the written warning, the overheard conversation where Gregory explicitly stated they intentionally underpaid long-term employees, the pattern of at least 6 women over 5 years being underpaid and pushed out when they complained, the settlement offer designed to buy my silence, I attached documentation, redacted pay stubs showing the disparities, copies of my performance reviews, the written warning I received for asking questions. I concluded, I have filed formal complaints with the Department of Labor and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. These complaints are now public record. I have also retained legal counsel. I am not seeking a quiet settlement. I am seeking accountability and systemic change to ensure no other woman experiences what I and others have experienced. I cannot, in good conscience, stay silent while this continues. Sincerely, Teresa Williams. I hit send and closed my laptop. It is done, I said. Marcus squeezed my shoulders. I am proud of you. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Texts from former colleagues. Calls from numbers I did not recognize. I turned it off. By 9, my email had been forwarded throughout the company. By 10, someone had leaked it to tech industry social media. By 11, it was on tech news blogs. I turned my phone back on briefly to check messages. Dozens of texts from current and former employees. Most were supportive. A few were hostile, accusing me of being a troublemaker, of hurting the company and therefore hurting their jobs. But 7 messages stood out. 7 current female employees, reaching out privately. They had all experienced the same thing. Underpayment. Dismissive responses when they asked questions. Fear of retaliation. Thank you for saying something. One wrote, I have been here 9 years and just found out the same thing. I was too scared to speak up. By noon, the story had been picked up by major tech news websites. TechCrunch ran it. The Verge ran it. The headline was damning. Software company accused of systematic gender pay discrimination. The company's stock price. They had gone public 2 years ago, dropped 8%. By 2, the story had spread beyond tech news to mainstream media. Local news stations were reaching out for interviews. By 4, 2 board members had resigned. They released a brief statement saying they were not aware of the compensation practices and could not, in good conscience, remain on the board until a full investigation was completed. By end of business day, Tech Venture Capital released a statement putting the $20 million investment deal on hold, pending an independent investigation into labor practices. I watched it all unfold from my living room. It felt surreal. Like watching something happen to someone else. Diana called. She was crying. We did it. We actually did it. Jennifer called. Lynn called. Rachel called, excited about the momentum. Then, at 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang from a number I recognized. The main line for the company. I almost did not answer. But curiosity won. Hello. Teresa. It is David Hartman, the CEO. I had seen him at company-wide meetings but never spoken to him directly. Mr. Hartman. Please, call me David. His voice sounded exhausted. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? I was stunned. I expected anger, threats, legal maneuvering, not a request to meet. Why? I asked. Because I did not know. I did not know what Gregory was doing. I did not know about the compensation practices. And I need to make this right. You did not know your CFO was systematically underpaying women and bragging about it. No, I did not. And I understand if you do not believe me, but I am asking for a chance to talk. In person. Tomorrow. Anywhere you want. I will come alone. I looked at Marcus. He shrugged, leaving it up to me. I will meet with you, I said. But my attorney will be there. Of course. Thank you. After I hung up, my phone buzzed with a new message, from an email address I did not recognize. Miss Williams, my name is Emily Rodriguez. I am an investigative reporter with a major national newspaper. I would like to interview you about systematic gender discrimination in the tech industry. Your story could be part of a front-page feature. Would you be willing to speak with me? I looked at the message for a long time. David wanted to meet. A national reporter wanted to interview me. The story was getting bigger than I ever imagined. I did not know what came next. But I knew one thing. They could not make this go away quietly. Tuesday morning, I met David at a coffee shop across town. Neutral territory. Rachel sat beside me. David came alone, as promised. He looked terrible. Rumpled shirt, dark circles under his eyes. This man who usually projected polished confidence looked like he had not slept in days. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. I did not respond. Just waited. He pulled out a folder. "I spent the last 24 hours with our legal team and an independent auditor. I needed to understand what happened, what Gregory did." He opened the folder. Inside were spreadsheets, lots of them. The preliminary audit shows 23 employees were significantly underpaid compared to market rates and internal peers. The pattern clearly targets women and long-term employees. Over the past 5 years, the company saved approximately $1.2 million through these practices. He looked sick saying it. Gregory had autonomy over compensation decisions. I was focused on product development and sales. I missed the red flags. I should not have, but I did. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" I asked. "No. Nothing I say will make this better. But I want you to know I am horrified. This is not the company I thought I was building." He slid the audit results across the table. The numbers were even worse than I thought. 23 people. Over $1 million. I fired Gregory yesterday afternoon. Security walked him out. I fired Sandra this morning. She was complicit. She knew what was happening and helped cover it up. That caught my attention. They are gone. Yes, and I have hired an independent firm to conduct a complete compensation audit. Every employee. 5 years of data. We are going to correct every disparity we find. That is a start, Rachel said. But what about accountability? What about the women who were pushed out before Teresa? What about systemic changes to make sure this never happens again? David nodded. That is why I am here. I want to know what you need to see justice served. I had prepared for this. Rachel and I had discussed it. Full back pay plus interest for every affected employee, current and former. Public acknowledgement of what happened. Donations to nonprofits supporting women in tech. Independent oversight of compensation practices going forward. Annual audits. Transparency. David looked at Rachel. We will agree to all of that. In writing, Rachel said. Binding agreement. In writing, David confirmed. We talked for another hour. David seemed genuinely remorseful. Maybe it was performance. Maybe it was real. I was not sure I cared. What mattered was the outcome. Before I left, David asked, will you come back? With fair compensation, with oversight, with real change, would you consider staying? I had not expected that question. I do not know, I said honestly. I need to think about it. The newspaper article published Thursday morning. Front page. The headline, The Hidden Cost of Loyalty. How Tech Companies Systematically Underpay Long-Term Employees. Emily Rodriguez had done her homework. She interviewed me, Diana, Jennifer, Lynn, and 4 other women. She got internal documents, expert analysis from labor economists, comments from industry leaders. The article was devastating and comprehensive. It detailed not just my company but similar practices across the tech industry. The strategy of hiring new employees at market rates while keeping legacy employees at suppressed wages. The calculated decision to exploit loyalty. One expert quoted in the article said, companies have learned that employees are risk-averse. They will accept being underpaid rather than face the uncertainty of job hunting. It is rational economic behavior from the company's perspective, but it is deeply exploitative. The article went viral. Within hours, it was trending on social media. Major news outlets picked it up. Tech industry leaders were forced to comment. By Friday afternoon, 3 other major tech companies announced they were conducting internal pay equity audits. One CEO tweeted, Teresa Williams showed us we can do better. We are listening. That same afternoon, Tech Venture Capital released another statement. The investment deal was officially dead. They cited irreconcilable concerns about company culture and leadership. I felt conflicted about that. The company would suffer. Innocent employees would suffer. But maybe that was necessary for real change. Then, Saturday morning, I woke to unexpected news. A state senator had announced hearings on pay discrimination in the tech industry. She specifically named my case as the catalyst. She invited me to testify. I was still processing that when my phone rang. An unknown number. Miss Williams? This is James Chen from Tech Venture Capital. I know our firm just pulled out of the deal with your former company, but we would like to talk to you about something different. What do you mean? We see a massive market opportunity in helping companies address pay equity before they face the problems your former employer faced. Companies are terrified right now. They want help auditing their practices, fixing disparities, implementing oversight. We think there is a business there, and we think you should lead it. I almost laughed. You want me to start a company? We want to fund you to start a consulting firm focused on pay equity. You would be founder and CEO. We provide seed funding. You build the business. How much funding? $500,000 initially. 2-year runway. We can discuss equity structure. I sat down. This was not what I expected. Any of it. Can I think about it? Of course. But Teresa, you have momentum right now. Your story resonated. Companies are scared and looking for solutions. Strike while the iron is hot. After I hung up, Marcus asked, "What was that about?" I told him. He stared at me. Then he started laughing. "You got underpaid for 13 years, fought back, and now a venture capital firm wants to give you $500,000 to start a company. Apparently, that is the most poetic justice I have ever heard." I called Rachel, then Diana. We talked through it. The opportunity was real. The market need was real. And I actually knew how to solve this problem. I had lived it. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. Monday morning, I called James back. "I am in. Let us do this." 3 months later, everything had changed. My former company completed its full compensation audit. 28 employees received back pay adjustments. I received $78,000 in back pay plus interest. 12 other women received similar payments. The smallest was $42,000. The largest was $96,000. The company implemented a new transparent pay structure. Every role had a published salary band. No more secret negotiations. No more legacy rates. The Tech Industry Trade Association created new voluntary standards for pay equity. Major companies signed on, pledging regular audits and transparency. I testified before the State Senate Committee. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I told my story in front of cameras and senators and reporters. I spoke about loyalty being weaponized against workers, about systems designed to exploit rather than reward dedication. 2 senators cried during my testimony. One said afterward, "You gave voice to something millions of people feel but cannot articulate." A month later, federal legislation was introduced. The Pay Equity Transparency Act. It would require companies over a certain size to conduct regular audits and report disparities. It had bipartisan support. But the biggest change was Equity First Consulting. My company. It still felt strange saying that. With Tech Ventures seed funding, I rented office space, hired an accountant, built a website. My first employee was Diana. She came on as senior consultant, then Jennifer, then Lynn. The women who had been pushed out were now building something new together. My first client was my former company. The irony was not lost on anyone. David hired me to oversee the implementation of their new compensation system, to train managers, to audit results. It felt strange walking into that building again, past the desk where I used to work, into conference rooms where I had been dismissed and gaslit. But this time, I was not an undervalued employee. I was the expert they needed. Within 3 months, we had 8 corporate clients, small companies trying to get ahead of problems, large companies trying to fix existing ones, all of them scared of ending up in the headlines the way my former employer had. The work was demanding, long hours, steep learning curve. But it was meaningful in a way my old job never was. Every audit we completed, every disparity we corrected, was a win, not just for me, but for women who would never know their pay was fair because of the work we did. I made more money in my first 3 months running Equity First than I made in any year at my old company. But the money was not the most important part. The purpose was. Gregory, I heard through the grapevine, was hired by another tech company 3 months after being fired. He took a VP role at a mid-sized firm. Typical. Men like him always landed on their feet. but I made sure his new employer knew his history. I sent a professional, factual email to their board. What they did with that information was their choice. At least they could not say they did not know. Sandra left the tech industry entirely. I heard she went into real estate. Maybe that was better for everyone. Paul sent me a long, handwritten letter. He apologized for not standing up for me, for being complicit through his silence. He said he knew it was wrong but was too afraid of losing his own job to speak up. He called himself a coward. I wrote back. I told him I appreciated the apology but that I had lost respect for him, not for failing to be a hero, but for actively participating in a system he knew was unjust. There was a difference between not being brave and actively enabling harm. I did not know if he understood that distinction, but I needed to say it. David and I developed an odd professional relationship. He hired Equity First for ongoing work. He spoke publicly about his failures and what he learned. Some people thought it was genuine growth. Others thought it was damage control. Maybe it was both. What mattered was that the company changed. Real policies, real oversight, real accountability. I reconnected with former colleagues who stayed. Several thanked me privately. A few told me they received promotions and substantial raises after the audit. One woman told me she had been ready to quit but now felt valued for the first time in years. That meant more than any paycheck. 4 months after I started Equity First, I was invited to speak at a major Women in Tech conference. 2,000 people in attendance. The keynote stage. I was terrified. Public speaking had never been my strength. I was a developer, not a presenter. But Rachel helped me prepare. Diana helped me practice. Marcus listened to my speech so many times he could recite it. The day arrived. I stood backstage, heart pounding, hands shaking. They announced my name. I walked onto the stage. 2,000 faces looked back at me. I took a breath and began. 5 months ago, I was sitting in a bathroom stall at work, holding a document that would change my life. It was a payroll spreadsheet, and it showed me that after 13 years of loyalty, dedication, and excellent performance, my company valued me at 72% of what they valued new hires. I told the story. All of it. The meetings, the dismissals, the retaliation, the overheard conversation that revealed the truth. My loyalty was seen as weakness to exploit. They counted on me being too afraid to leave, too tired to fight, too grateful for the scraps they threw me. They were wrong. I talked about the other women, the pattern, the systematic exploitation. But here is what I learned. Change is hard and scary, but staying in a situation where you are undervalued is harder and scarier. It eats away at you slowly, day by day, until you forget what you are worth. I looked out at the audience, saw women nodding, saw tears. If you are in a situation where you are not valued, where you are not paid fairly, where you are not respected, I promise you, you are stronger than you think. Your voice matters more than you know, and there are people ready to stand with you. I paused, making eye contact with as many people as I could. Do not stay silent. Do not accept less than you deserve. And when they tell you to be grateful for what you have, remember, you do not owe loyalty to people who never valued yours. The applause started before I finished. It grew into a standing ovation. 2,000 people on their feet. I stood there, overwhelmed, tears streaming down my face. After the speech, dozens of women approached. Each one had a story. Some were experiencing pay discrimination. Some had left toxic jobs. Some were just starting their careers and wanted to know how to protect themselves. I gave each one my card. I listened to every story. Some would call, some would not, but they knew someone had fought and won. They knew it was possible. That evening, I drove home with the windows down, music playing, feeling something I had not felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had stood up. I had fought back, and I had won, and in winning, I had helped others win too. That night, I tucked Emma and Jack into bed. Emma looked up at me with her serious 9-year-old face. Mom, at school today, my teacher asked what our parents do for work. I told her you help make sure women get paid fairly. She said that is really important. It is, sweetheart. Were you scared? When you fought back against the mean people at your old job? I thought about that bathroom stall, about shaking hands photographing that document, about walking into Gregory's office, about hitting send on that email. Yes, I was terrified. But you did it anyway. Yes, that is what brave means, right? Being scared but doing it anyway. I smiled. Exactly right. Emma hugged me tight. From his room, Jack called out, "Mom, you are my hero." I laughed, kissed them both, turned out the lights. In bed that night, Marcus beside me, I thought about the journey. 5 months ago, I was an underpaid, undervalued employee who believed the lie that loyalty would eventually be rewarded. Now I was running my own company, helping others, making real change. The path had been terrifying. I risked everything: my job, my financial security, my reputation. There were moments I thought I made a terrible mistake. But I had not. I had found something I did not know I was missing: my voice, my power, my purpose. They had tried to make me small, to make me grateful for less than I deserved, to exploit my dedication. Instead, they taught me what I was really worth. And that lesson was worth more than any paycheck. I was not a hero. I was just someone who got tired of accepting less and decided to fight back. But maybe that was enough. I fell asleep that night with Marcus' arm around me, knowing that tomorrow I would wake up and do meaningful work. That women across the country were fighting similar battles and winning. That change was happening, not because of me alone, but because I had been part of it. And that was everything. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a situation where you were undervalued because you were afraid of what would happen if you spoke up? What helped you find your voice? Or what is still holding you back? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories about standing up for what is right, even when it is scary, subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is struggling with whether to speak up or stay silent. Your share might be exactly what they need to find their courage. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you are stronger than you think. Your voice matters more than you know, and you deserve to be valued for what you bring to the table. Do not ever let anyone convince you otherwise.